What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Vinnie Moore. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here, man.
Man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime, man, anytime. Thank you for awesome new music. Your new solo album, Double Exposure, is absolutely kick ass. With the making of this album, was the mindset kind of just like picking up where you left off after your previous solo album, Soul Shifter, or were you kind of like using this album to explore more uncharted territory?
Initially, it was what you said first. I was just going to continue down my path, but then something else happened during the process. And that was that I heard the songs and started hearing vocals in my head and decided to came up with this concept to do half vocals, half instrumental, do two different versions of each song. So it was kind of initially unplanned, but it just sort of happened and I rolled with it. And it was during the lockdown. So I was in this frame of mind where it's like, I don't even care. Let's just do something wacky and quirky and put it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, the world was so wacky and quirky, so the music that was written during it is very appropriate to do the same, right?
This is probably the only good thing to come out of that whole period is a lot of people kind of put product out there and just thought they'd do something different and experiment it and explore it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Having different vocalists on this album, does your like guitar technique almost kind of like need to change to sort of like fit their vocal style, whether it will be like adjusting the tuning or playing in a different key or whatnot, or do they kind of like adjust their vocal styles more to fit your signature style of guitar playing?
Well, they got finished songs, so I definitely didn't adapt anything on my end. And I doubt they did either. They just kind of got creative with the songs and jumped in and did their thing. And that's sort of how it happened, which is the case with anything. Like when I write with UFO, Phil gets the tunes and picks the ones he likes and just kind of sings to them. And, he just does his thing and puts it on top of the music. There's no real adjustment. And, each singer would approach a song differently, but, it's a hard thing to really explain, but they basically just were free to do whatever they want and be creative,
Yeah. So it
but,
was
do what's right for the song.
so it was completely like a creative thing. It wasn't like you said sing about this or sing in this way. You just kind of let you kind of trusted them with your own composition and let them bring their own spin to it.
Well, what I did on the demos is I sang and I jotted down some temporary lyrics. I'm not a great lyricist by any means, and I'm not a great singer. I'm okay, but I sent them demos with only the music and then also a version with me singing. And I said to everybody, do whatever you want. If you want to use any of my stuff lyrically or melodically, go ahead and do that. If you want to just totally ignore my stuff and do whatever you want, that's fine too. My stuff is only a reference. And both things ended up happening. Like there are a couple instances where the singers totally, did something way different than what I came up with. And I was pleasantly surprised in those cases, actually. They did a really good job creatively. And there were some cases where, they used some of my words and my melodies, like in Still Waters, the chorus is mine. And River Flow, the chorus is mine lyrically and melodically. So yeah, both things happened, and it was an interesting thing to collaborate.
When you have like an album that's like half instrumental and half incorporating vocal styles, do you think that maybe like the song adapts different type of meaning behind it, or there's different type of context when it's more instrumental versus when there's lyrics over it in a way, or being that it's still under the Vinnie Moore solo project, maybe they do sort of like convey a similar emotion or a similar element?
There's maybe a similar element, but when you put something on top, it can go anywhere creatively. It's like I had one review of my record where a guy was like, "What? These are the same songs. Why did you title them differently? It's crazy." And it's because the song had titles and meaning to me when I wrote them as instrumentals, and then when the singers got them, they got creative and inspired and wrote about whatever they wanted to write about. So, in a sense, it became a different song. So, yeah, this is an interesting thing. I don't know if anybody's ever done this type of thing before. I certainly haven't. But, we took like a basic song structure and then there were two different paths over top of that. And it just kind of shows you that, things can go in many different directions.
Well, I've always said that like the guitar, especially with solos and leads, that it does have like a similar purpose as sort of like a vocalist what does in terms of like it conveys emotions and conveys
Right.
different meaning through its melodies and through its real progressions in a way. So, is it fair to say that when you're laying down your guitar work, whether it will be for your solo project or for UFO, it is sort of like conveying an emotion in a similar way that a vocalist would use his voice for?
Definitely. I'm definitely expressing emotions and, trying to give people a feel, which is basically what I'm feeling. Hopefully they feel what I feel. And, sometimes with song titles, people will kind of come up with what they think the meaning of the song is. And they're probably totally wrong, but I'll never say what my song titles refer to because I think it's important that they interpret things and let the emotion take over and lead them wherever, they want to go
Yeah.
as far as what they're thinking.
Well, when I saw that one of the songs was titled Vertical Horizon, I immediately thought of like the 90s alternative rock band in a way. So like I thought maybe that was sort of like an homage to them in a way.
Actually, Ed came up with that. He wrote all the lyrics for that one and the melodies and the titles. So I didn't have very much to do with it. So I'm not sure what he was thinking, but yeah, I really like what he did for that one.
Yeah, that was a fantastic opening track. Definitely started the album off on a excellent note. When it comes,
Oh, thank you so much.
of course, when it comes to your writing, what and kind of going back, whether it could be for your solo work or for UFO, is there like a preconceived vision in a way? I know that with Double Exposure, this was kind of like an organic, sort of out of the box sort of idea. But like, do you usually start with like a preconceived vision in mind, or do you kind of just like to let things sort of fall into place on their own?
I kind of let like things to fall into place on their own. But like if I hear we're doing a new UFO record, then obviously I'm going to get into the zone and start writing songs specifically for that. And there have been times where I'm in that zone, working on UFO tunes, and I write something and it's like, oh, this wouldn't really be appropriate for UFO, so I'll keep that for instrumental or my own thing. That has definitely happened. But usually when I know I'm writing for a UFO record, most of the stuff I come up with is kind of geared and directed towards that. And then when I'm writing for one of my records, then of course, I know it's going to go to that.
Mhm.
So I kind of keep them separate, but sometimes when you're inspired and you get into that writing zone, you might come up with something unplanned, that kind of points in one of the directions or the other.
Well, because I love asking this question when you mention like inspiration in a way. Is inspiration really something that could be sought out? Can you really look for inspiration, or do you just kind of have to let it strike you when you least expect it?
For me, I have to let it strike me. If I seek out inspiration, I'll come up with nothing. If I sit down and try to write a tune, I'll come up with something decent musically that makes sense and, whatever. But the most magical things just kind of happen when you're not really planning. I'm just sitting around playing guitar and, the muse shows up and you feel something, you're inspired by it. And it's like, bam, there it is, that initial spark. And then once I get that, the floodgates sort of open and I get many more related ideas, sometimes even too many ideas for one song. So I have to edit and filter out things. But yeah, it's not something for me that I can try to do. It kind of has to happen to me.
But if you sometimes you are working on a song for days or weeks, maybe even months. So do you find it maybe like the longer you work on something, the harder it is to sort of maintain that initial inspiration or that emotion that initially sparked the idea?
Yeah, you can get into a thing where you start to struggle, and that's like not a good place to be in. And it happens, happens on every record with certain songs. Usually the songs that come the quickest are the best, most inspirational. They require less thought and you just kind of go with it and there it is, like, wow, you know,
Yeah.
there's a great song and it just kind of came to me. But, sometimes you get into a thing where you labor over things, and that has benefits too. You might come up with some creative things that you wouldn't have come up with, but I prefer the easy way, which is when you get inspired and it happens quickly. That's always the best for me.
Yeah, I'd imagine too, though, if you maybe are just picking up the guitar for the sake of noodling and experimenting, you always like to leave the record button on, right? Because nothing is worse than a
Well,
forgotten idea.
I used to have a Sony cassette Walkman that I would carry with me everywhere back in the day and record all my ideas. Because, you come up with an idea and I would forget them. So, but nowadays it's my phone, I just have my phone and I just record ideas there so I don't forget them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I had like 10 number one hits that I totally forgot about, lost. Just joking, I wish. But yeah,
Well, I've always said
it's good to record.
I've always said it's inspiration tends to strike at the most inconvenient of times.
Totally, totally. Sometimes it's when I'm laying in bed and I hear something in my head and I'm like, oh, I got to remember that, got to remember that. And when that happens, I never remember the idea
Yeah.
when I'm half asleep. I wish I could somehow record that, but yeah, it's either feast or famine. And when there's something there, man, you got to record it and make sure
Yeah.
you have it.
The day that they invent like a recorder or something where you can like kind of it scans your head and is able to record the melodies or ideas you hear in your head, that's where every forgotten song, every album that hasn't been written will finally see the light of day.
Exactly. There probably will be some really good stuff too, because I think when you're in that half asleep zone, I don't know what it is, but like I start hearing interesting things in my head.
Yeah, I think it's the bridge between conscious and subconscious. I think it's almost kind of like the crossroads between reality and the dreams that you'll fade into.
Totally. Somebody mentioned alpha waves and, whatever. It doesn't matter. But yeah, there's something there.
Yep. How do you know when you are finished with a song, though?
The problem is sometimes never. And I just have to consciously say, okay, man, let this go. And even when I hear one of my records and I hear a particular song, I'll start thinking again, get into that creative zone. I'll get ideas and I'll start thinking, why didn't I think of this? I could have done this or I could have done that. And it's very hard for me to let go. And I don't know why, but yeah, what really helps is starting another song, and then I'll start obsessing about something new and let the previous one go.
Fair enough.
But it's difficult for an artist to let things go.
And with UFO, because it's a band, so it's a collaborative effort. You all have to communicate with each other. Camaraderie is a big element. Is it fair to say that with your solo work, there is a little bit more creative independence? Not to say that I could tell when I'm listening to UFO that it's your guitar solos and that it's your signature sound. But would you say that maybe like I guess for your solo work, all the pressure kind of falls on you in a way?
Yeah, totally. All the pressure falls on me. And, within a band, it's more, there's five people. And so it's more of a democracy and there's less control, totally, than when I do my solo stuff, which is I can go anywhere I want musically or creatively. And I have the final say, of course. And, with a band, or even if you're collaborating with one guy, there's a back and forth and you work on it together. And sometimes your ideas are used and sometimes some of your ideas aren't used because that other person takes it in a different direction than what you had initially intended. So there's more give and take in a band situation, but that's a great thing because you come up with things together.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of things, no one artist has all the knowledge or one artist has all the skills. So you kind of, art comes out of art in that regards.
Totally.
Mm.
Everybody has a different viewpoint and a different approach and idea in their head.
Yeah. And like whenever like I ask an artist like how the making of an album was and they always say, "Oh, we all collectively came together and we all had mutual like I don't believe it because if you're in a band with five guys and you're writing a dozen or so songs, there's going to be room for disagreement and I think that could actually help add contrast to it.
Absolutely. There's disagreement. Sometimes you get annoyed, like, you don't see things my way, but you have to learn to let go in a band. And that's why it's good to have a solo career too, because like get to be the boss in that one, totally 100%, and do whatever I want.
And when you like go to like your solo projects, because you know like a solo work, it's a self portrait in your style of songs. So when you're like playing all these different songs from different time periods, is it almost kind of like if you were to replay that, you kind of go back in time in a way? It kind of brings you back to where you were making at that particular time, or do you think that when you play the songs years later, they have new meaning in a way, and therefore maybe they are still representative of who you are in the now as opposed to back then?
Both things, I think. Music has this amazing thing where it can take you back, not even your own stuff, but any song you listen to can take you back to your childhood or whatever. And it's just incredible how that happens. You get transported back in time. With my stuff, a lot of times I hear it, and yeah, it takes me right back to in the recording studio recording it, or it back into when I was writing it. I mean, there's a song on my first record called Hero Without Honor, and it goes into this end section, and it brings me right back to sitting in my bedroom looking out the window, and it's snowing out on this particular day, and I'm coming up with that part and then laying down melodies and solos. And every time I hear it, I go right back to that. It's kind of insane.
Yeah,
And yeah, I get lots of memories when listening to my own stuff or playing it live. But you can make kind of new connections and memories too, playing things on stage.
definitely. Definitely, especially when the audience is engaging with it. There's probably like times where you play a song and you remember one audience member's reaction to it at the front row or something.
Exactly. Like being in Finland and playing a song and seeing a guy in the front row and he's mouthing every melody, as I play it. It's like, wow, that's pretty insane. But yeah,
I'm surprised that doesn't throw you off. That would totally throw me off.
yeah, you can't look for too long. You get confused.
And I have one more question for you, and that's more of like a technical question in a way, because with the solos, there's plenty of times where you hear the solo over a song, but maybe the background music that supports it almost makes it sounds like the solo doesn't fit in a way. Like, so when you're writing a guitar solo, do you prefer to maybe have kind of like background music already present, just so you know like what key you're working in and knowing what notes will and won't work in a way?
As far as writing, like sometimes the rhythms come first, sometimes the melody and the rhythm guitar are intertwined and they're both there together. But whatever you play over top of the rhythm melodically has to make sense and, fit the mood and of course, like be in key and all that kind of stuff. Mostly I hear melodies and rhythms together and then I'll like record the rhythm and fine tune the melody, maybe experiment a little bit. In the case of the song Meltdown, I totally wrote that whole song rhythmically with no melodies or solos whatsoever. I just love the riff so much. And then when I was done with that, I thought, okay, I have to come up with something melodically that doesn't interfere or ruin the coolness of that rhythm, of those rhythms. And so I tried to you know, not get in the way too much with what I played melodically. But usually that doesn't happen. Usually it's like working together with the rhythms and the melodies.
Yeah, it's sort of like a chicken before the egg question. It could, there's explanations for both.
Exactly. I mean, there's no rule. It happens every way possible.
Yeah, which I think is the beautiful thing about the guitar. They say, like, I remember when the Beatles first started to say guitar bands are not in style anymore, and look how much we've discovered since then and how many tools are yet to be discovered.
Right. Hair bands are out.
Never. So, before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today, for such an excellent conversation to start the week off. Is there just anything else with Double Exposure you would like to promote in terms of shows, or what else we could be expecting in the Vinnie Moore camp for the near future?
Working on U.S. shows. It looks like I'm going over to Europe to do shows in September. And yeah, if you haven't heard the record, check it out. Let me know what you think. And, thanks to you, Alex, for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. Thank you, everybody. We are here with Vinnie Moore. Double Exposure. Pick up the record now while supplies last forever. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.
Thanks, guys.